Today on Locked On Flames, we are going to talk all about the Flames potentially being a playoff team next season and what if they take full advantage of their draft capital and cap space come draft.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jessica Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Today, I thought would be a great day kick off the week with some mailbag questions from our listeners and viewers, as well as some Locked On hosts. And I thought we could dive into, are they a playoff team come next season? Could they potentially trade up? And what about all that draft capital? Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. And let's jump into this because the first thing that kind of sparked this for me, I guess, was thinking about this season and how close they came to a playoff spot, right? Like it wasn't completely out of reach. At moments, it felt beyond out of reach and like it was over, but it came down to game 81 and unfortunately didn't happen. But if they emulate certain aspects of this season and improve in other areas, could this team be a playoff team? Obviously, you are going to need to start with your big offensive, like your highest scorers, right? You're going to need Kadri and Huberdeau to have those big 25 plus goal seasons again. I really don't want to jinx it, so I'm not even going to say it, but unfortunately, I don't know if we see that. I want to say it's like no problem for Kadri, but again, feels like it's a jinx. We know that Huberdeau's production has been very up and down and inconsistent since being in Calgary, so, you can't bet on that. I feel like the only person you can bet on having a 20-plus goal season is Kadri, and you need more of that in your lineup. You can't just be relying on one player. However, you do have a young gentleman rising, and that would be Matt Coronado. He had 24 goals this season. Absolutely great breakout year for him and just a stellar performance all around. And I think that if you can get a similar performance, if not more from him next season, then of course you're looking at winning a few more games if you get some more goals out of him. A big thing here is, of course, Connor Zary staying healthy and finds a definitive role in this lineup because we have been going, I say we as if we're on this team. He's been going back and forth between center and wing. He was only ever used as a wing in the AHL. He hadn't played center since juniors, and the Flames, Ryan Huska didn't have him try center again until after the trade deadline in 2024. So, I think he does great at both positions, but it again reminds me of a Sam Bennett situation where you are not using this player to their full potential and maybe gets a little frustrating at some point. Right now, I think the Flames still have time with Connor Zary. I think the sooner they figure out his permanent role, or it doesn't have to be fully permanent, but his main role, it's going to go better for everyone's production and consistency. You're going to be integrating players like Bruce Brustowicz and Zane Parekh, even if you aren't trading Rasmus Andersson. So But if you are trading him, you are 100% integrating them at a different level than maybe you're expecting right now. So you're going to have to, sorry, but getting rid of a minus 38 player is probably going to help your defense a little bit. Rasmus Andersson seems like a fantastic human being, a great guy, but just the defensive struggles last year definitely took a toll on the score sheet for him. It's not good when you set a new franchise record for being on the ice for most goals allowed. But, players are going to have to step up. Defense is going to have to show up big time. And obviously you have Dustin Wolf, but it's not entirely on his shoulders to be what's the word I'm looking for? Like, he can't carry this team. I talked about it last week, but you can't expect this kid to start, let's say 50 plus games a season and just carry this team to the finish line. How many other goaltenders have you worn out that way? And it's not practical. And the defense has to step up. The defense has to be better. And maybe you have some forwards really step up their defensive game as well. Just anything to kind of boost that and kind of build out in front of Dustin Wolf. And we're going to talk more about the defense later, but we saw what unfolded this year. Again, the playoffs were not a distant dream. At the start of the season, they absolutely were. And then they go on a 5-game heater and suddenly it's, okay, the Cup's coming back to Calgary. Obviously, not the end game or end result, but it was a long fought season. They fought until the very end, and unfortunately, close but no cigar. And I feel like the days of get in and anything can happen are kind of over, because you have teams like Edmonton in Florida who are built with just like the most elite talent. And they're obviously meeting again in the finals. So you have to have the it factor. And we're going to talk about that later this week. Kind of, the anatomy of a Stanley Cup final or a Stanley Cup winning team. What makes up a Stanley Cup champion team. But anything is possible, I think, in terms of that first round. We saw it with Winnipeg. We saw it with the Stars against Colorado. Montreal didn't go down without a fight. So anything can happen. But I don't necessarily think that means a deep run can happen if you don't have the right ingredients. But coming up next, we're going to talk about, we're going to answer the question of, are the Flames capable of trading up, and will they trade up in this year's draft? Coming up next on Locked On Flames. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I think that if you're going to place your first $5 bet, a $200 bonus bet after cashing in on that $5 win would be fantastic. Bet on, anytime goal, or maybe, Matthew Tkachuk 3 shots on net, Sam Bennett anytime goal, and the Connor McDavid 4+ shots on goal. Put yourself a nice little parlay together. I can't talk. But if you're new to FanDuel, it is the perfect time to head to FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames and making the show part of your busy days. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. And this question comes from Locked On Flyers host Russ, Sportsology on Twitter. He's a very smart gentleman, and I think that he know. I don't think he knows his stuff. I know he knows his stuff. So it's always great to get his analysis on things, and thanks for asking a question. Definitely appreciated. Do I think the Flames will trade up in the draft? I think it's likely. I don't think it's a far-fetched idea that they would consider it. I think that the Flames, the biggest change from Tree Living to Conroy is the way that nothing is off the table. I don't think unless it is something ludicrous like trading Dustin Wolf, I think every single option that comes across his mind or his desk is considered. And that's not something we saw with Brad Tree Living, right? We knew every July 1st, you're going to sign a 34, 35, maybe 36-year-old to a 2-year deal for, $2 million. And they're just going to be doing cardio every night, doing absolutely nothing besides being a defensive liability and the talk of the town for the worst reasons possible. Conroy, I think, there's always room for improvement. I had this conversation with someone the other day about why they don't fill out surveys, because they don't think that it's possible to be a 5 out of 5. So, of course, everyone has room to improve, and that includes Craig Conroy and any general manager. I don't care how many Stanley Cup winning rosters you've assembled. So, back to this. Craig Conroy definitely has room to improve, but he will pull the trigger on an idea, on a trade, on a free agent, on any sort of decision, if he feels it is the right move for the organization. And last year there was a lot of talk about, oh yeah, the Flames have the 9th overall pick, and even the year before that, it was okay. How can Craig Conroy really set the precedent? Because this was his second full season as a general manager. So he's had 3 off seasons now to figure out where to go. And the Flames, I still remember people were thinking they could trade Elias Lindholm for the 3rd overall pick to Columbus, which is so silly, but it was a conversation that people had. And, I think the Flames would absolutely consider doing something if it were reasonable and not rash. I think, Rasmus Andersson is going to be traded by the trade deadline. I think that we have all gathered that. It doesn't sound like the teams have come remotely close to term or money value. So, and if we go back and listen to his end of season exit interviews, he just seemed so fed up and done with everything. But it's a matter of if the draft is the right position in place to do it. Because no one's just going to take Rasmus Andersson for the, let's say, I don't even know who, a mid-teens pick. I don't think that that's happening. Again, it's the draft. Anything can happen. If a general manager is eager and hungry enough, if someone wants Rasmus Andersson, they'll do it. Obviously, the Flames would probably have to throw in another prospect there. Or, hey, if you want another defenseman, here's Miramonov or Sam Hanzik if you're looking for a young forward. But I'm hopeful that this does happen. I think it should happen. I think, we're going to talk more about what they have in terms of draft capital coming up a little bit later. But you have 2 first-round picks, the 18th overall and likely the 32nd pick overall, or overall pick. So you have room to play around, and you have plenty of cap space. I know that we talked about it last week. I believe it was Friday. Just how it may be less common for teams to need a third team in a trade because of cap space. But I think once teams get more comfortable spending more, they'll be, reach the point like they did last time where they get too close to the cap ceiling and need a third team to help. So maybe that happens. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen this season, but maybe a few years down the line, and honestly, maybe in a better draft, and the Flames can, step in there and make a difference too. But ultimately, it's going to cost them. And if they're willing to make those moves, that's great, because we know how hungry people are for change within the fan base and how people would really like to see some forward motion in the rebuild process. And we know that it can be a long journey, and it's up to the Flames to do it right. Make it quick and seamless as possible. But coming up next, we're going to wrap up the show with more discussions about the Flames draft capital and just what they might do in order to beef up their defense here on Locked On Flames. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you are following me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Jess Belmosto. This is a conversation of something we have visited several times since April 17th when the season ended. The Flames are going to have a significant amount of cap space. They have 4 of their 7 draft picks are coming within the first 3 rounds, and they have $28 million in cap space. Is this an opportunity for them to go balls to the walls crazy? It very well could be. And Zach Martin, host of Locked On Hurricanes, asks, with the Flames carrying $28.145 million in cap and 4 of their 7 picks in the first 3 rounds, including 2 firsts, do you see them using all that draft capital and cap space to go big game hunting this summer to build around the core and upgrade the defense behind Weegar and Andersson? We're going to answer this because this is definitely a 2-parter. I do think that they throw their name in the ring for Mitch Marner and Sam Bennett, and they've recently kind of been tied to Barkov, just in terms of Elliot Friedman saying they would be big game hunting. So, I mean, I think it would be a loss it's one of those situations where I think, like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you're going to throw your name in the ring, even if you don't think you have a competitive enough offer, if you are maybe coming in low because, maybe you're not trying 100%, but just to say you're in on it situation, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked, but I don't see the Flames being a place for Mitch Marner, for Sam Bennett to return, for Ekblad, for Brad Marchand. It makes no sense to me why any of them, or why the Flames would want to sign any of them long term or for an expensive deal. And quite frankly, why Mitch Marner would even want to come here after the lack of playoff success he's had in Toronto. What's going to be different here? At least for the time being. Sorry if that's too negative, but I mean, let's look at the last 5 years. But I think they do use their draft capital to, like I mentioned before, trade up or find a way to include a pick, one of the picks in a trade. If they're looking to trade Rasmus Andersson before the or before the draft later this month, of course you're going to probably throw in one of your firsts. I think that it wouldn't be a surprise to me, especially if you do have to throw in like Sam Hanzik or trying to think. I think Yan Kuznetsov for defensive prospect, or Sam Hanzik for a forward. Like there aren't any prospects in the Flames prospect pool that make me think the deal is sweet enough with just a player, like 2 players. You would need to add a draft pick. So, yes, I think that would be something that they do. Or they try to get their hands on Bowen Byram. This is a name that has come up constantly, and he's a young left-handed defenseman the Flames could really use. I talked about it last week. Gurpal of the Win Column wrote a really nice article of why Byram would be a good fit for the Flames, and getting Kevin Ball and Weegar up on that top pairing, and putting Byram and Parekh together, or having maybe Jake Bean and Braden Pahal on the third pairing, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, the Flames need to get better defensively, almost as bad as they need to get better offensively. I think their defense is definitely trending in the right direction. So I think when you add Parekh, you're like, I understand both of them only have one NHL game under their belt, and it was game 82 of the season, but you have hope there based off of past performances and their developmental their resume through the system. So I think that you have something going there. In terms of like the core, I think adding Marco Rossi would be chef's kiss. I think that if you're going to try to add Maverick Bourque in the Rasmus Andersson trade, or if you offer sheet him, I think there are a number of ways the Flames could get their hands on some great players this summer. And I have an episode coming out Wednesday where I'm going to dive into deeper issues with the Flames and how they have so many middle six forwards, and the reality of not being able to keep them all and expecting them to play up in the lineup with a very special guest. But the Flames have to take advantage of this because they didn't really do much with it last year. They talked about being a third team. They talked about maybe making some trades, doing what they had to. But ultimately, the big trade of the season was Andrei Kuzmenko and Jacob Pelletier going to Philly, while Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee came back this way. So, do I want to see Craig Conroy be aggressive? Yes. I want to see what he can do now that the Flames are in this transition period. They made it through the trenches last year. But what's this year going to bring? Because you can't just rely on last season as a reference point. They have to make decisions to get better and make progress along this rebuild, retooling, whatever they want to call it. Because I know last summer or the summer before, they were like, we're not calling this a rebuild. But Craig Conroy kind of has dropped that term a few times, so that's what we're going to call it. But let's see. I do think there will be some things happening very soon. Just based off of where things are at in the off season. The draft is coming up this month. Free agency is literally a month away. There is so much that could unfold. Like, we could go to bed tonight and wake up and see that the Flames have traded for Marco Rossi. Like, that is absolutely something that could happen. Will it? I don't know if it'll happen tonight. I don't know if it'll happen, period. But it is something that you should definitely keep, your notifications on for, because we'll have you covered here on Locked On Flames whenever news breaks this summer. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. I greatly appreciate you. We'll do more of these as the off season continues as well. I have to say I am rooting for the Panthers in the Stanley Cup final, because the cup can't come back to Alberta unless it's for the Flames, which I know is not likely, a pipe dream right now, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But that'll do it for me here on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic week. It's June. It is time to enjoy the nice weather, enjoy the last stretch of NHL hockey for the season, and get on with the nice weather. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day. And I will see you all tomorrow. And like I mentioned earlier, I will have a very special guest joining me for Wednesday's episode, where we're talking about some pretty big news and, some things to keep an eye out for this offseason.